Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Chai Break podcast. This is your host, Shweta Ravishankar.
And Ramachari from New York City. This season, we're excited to interview a roster of amazing South Asian women who have broken barriers, questioned norms, and continue to make a mark for themselves.
They come to you from all over the globe, from Bangalore to New York, Melbourne, and everywhere in between. We hope you enjoy these conversations as much as we do and chime in along the way.
So let's get started.
Hello. Welcome to the Chai Break podcast. Hi, Rama. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Shravya. How are you?
Good. How's your week been so far?
Well, it's what are we? We're right in the middle of the week. It's a Wednesday. And it's been good. It's as usual. It's busy. Summers are somehow busy with the kids not in school and doing their things. There's always something to be taken care of in that angle. And I think the social festivities are around. So we're preparing for some events. So it's fun. It's a beautiful summer, at least, so we're enjoying it.
That's great to hear. Because, this morning I woke up at like 5:45 just as the sun was coming up.
Oh, nice.
And I was capturing those moments. And then I realized that, photography is I just love doing it because I just love capturing things, beautiful things. And I also realized that our guest today, Shravya, is a photo and video documentarian based in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh my God, I'm so excited about this interview. We're going to meet Shravya, and Shravya is just such a fascinating, guest we've had on our show. I mean, all our guests have something great to contribute. And Shravya has this uniqueness, like you rightly mentioned. She's a photo and video documentarian. She's based in Brooklyn in New York. But let me go a little bit about her background. She was born and raised in Vijayawada in India, in southern part of India, in a state called Andhra Pradesh. She moved to Brooklyn in 2015 and she graduated from the School of Visual Arts with a master's in photography. She was captivated by oral histories and how they influence and shape a culture. And her work is kind of an exploration of the home, identity, and personal space, largely focusing on the intimate and interpersonal stories of people of color and of queer people. And I think that's really fascinating, because she really intertwines her videography skills and photography skills into really weaving out these stories, identifying, the personal stories of and intimate stories of people of color and of queer people. Shravya's work has been very internationally recognized. She's been internationally commended and exhibited at various locations, such as Somerset House in London, Photoville and Art Space, New York City, and she's been featured in publications like the Vogue India and New York Times. Wow. So a huge shout out to Shravya. So Shravya, welcome to our show. How are you doing?
Hello. Good morning. I'm doing good. It's been a good day so far. It's only 10 a.m., but yeah, I had an early start.
I think you've already mentioned to us briefly before that you're really not an early morning person. So, and you know what? This is so interesting. Many of the people that we have interviewed so far, a lot of them have, they are very creative. Like you have a skill that's, very creative. And the people who tap into their creative skills are really not the morning type people.
That's very true.
So I think it's really, you're not being a morning person is a complete reflection of, your strength, actually. So that's good. So Shravya, you have such a fascinating background, because Shweta and I both resonate with a lot of your growing up years that you're going to talk about. So let's start with that. So talk us about your growing up years. What was your childhood like? Because what you've become is just amazing from where you were. So I would love our audience to hear a little bit more about it. So go on, Shravya.
Sure. I was born in Guntur, Andhra Pradesh, India, and my family is from Vijayawada, South India. I grew up in Vijayawada. I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering. I was always creatively inclined growing up as a kid, so my interests were in music writing and photography. I got into music because my mother wanted me to learn my grandmother's instrument, which is the veena.
Beautiful.
So when I was like 6 or 7 years old, I started learning the veena, and I absolutely disliked it. I think I was just too rebellious a kid to have the discipline to learn the veena. But I think as I grew older, as I got into my teenage years, my relatives and my parents started like hyping me up because I could play by ear. So I could like listen to a song and play it on the keys.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And so I think I really enjoyed that hype. And I got into learning a lot of musical instruments. So I learned the keyboard and I learned the violin, and I self-taught myself the harmonica. So I was like very musically inclined. And I wanted to join the music college, but like as the stereotype goes, most Indians are either
Exactly. Yeah.
or lawyers. So
It's either doctors, engineers, or lawyers and dentists, right? It's 4.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm part of that cliche too, as you know. So.
Same here.
It just feels like a previous life. But yeah, like I finished my engineering because I couldn't muster the courage to tell my family that I wanted to drop out.
Yeah.
During engineering, I picked up photography. I just started documenting my daily life on my cell phone, and I also started writing. So I just wanted like creative pursuits as a form of escapism. And I think after engineering, I moved to Chennai for my master's. I shifted streams, so I moved to Chennai for my master's in arts. I did my master's in arts and broadcast communication. So at that point, I was still pretty focused on like music writing and photography. And I think I chose photography as a professional career when a CEO of a record label invited me to photograph their musicians and a music festival. So I think it kind of like happened by process of elimination as opposed to like I didn't wake up one day and decided to be a photographer. It happened gradually over the years.
That's pretty awesome. So from there, at what point did you move to New York, and how did you get here?
Yeah. So I finished my master's in Chennai in 2013, and I took a quote unquote break year.
Good.
I did absolutely nothing. I had like very big dreams of like writing a book, so I started like chapters of my book. I was just living the best life. So I did that. I was also like working as a photographer. So I had my business partner back then, Bharat Vyas. We set up a wedding photography company called Grains Per Pixel. So the plan was to do weddings and then invest the money we get from weddings into like documentary photo essays.
Oh, nice.
So we tried to do that for around 2.5 years. And I was visiting New York in 2014 for a summer course in photography at International Center of Photography. And I fell in love with the city. So I went back home and applied for master's at School of Visual Arts. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell them because it was pretty funny. In 2013, when I was taking my quote unquote break here, they really pushed me to move to the States to pursue photography. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to the States. I am going to be in India. This is my home. Like, I'm not going anywhere. All of that. I rebelled. And then a year later, I was like, oh, maybe my parents are right. Like I applied and I got in and I moved to New York to pursue a master's in photography at School of Visual Arts 2015.
Oh, wow. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, the trajectory is awesome. I feel like you finally kind of found what you always wanted.
Yeah.
And it seemed more organic, as you were saying, it didn't suddenly happen overnight.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. And once you moved here, like, what was that like? Was it really radically different? Finally, did you feel like you belong, a sense of acceptance and a feeling that you can finally just be yourself here?
I think once I moved, I definitely had a culture shock for the first couple of months, especially for the first semester. I think I underestimated because my brother lives here. So I thought I lived on my brother's couch for the first 2 years after when I moved. So I thought, I have family and like school's gonna be similar to what I did my master's in India as well. The culture shock was just I think in my personal experience, the education system is different in India as opposed to here. and it's much more intense. What I did was a 1-year program. So it's like 10 months and 3 semesters or 4 semesters. So that was really hard. Finding community, just making friends. And I think there's a lot of inferiority complex that comes up within the first year when we moved to the States, when people who grew up there moved to the States, with accent being pointed out or stuff like that. Yeah. So I think it was that the shift was pretty hard for the first couple of years. I was also coming to terms with my identity because I didn't have enough language and resources to access what queerness meant to me back in India. And it was only after I moved to New York that I had the language to better understand how I can describe my identity. So it was a fun little ride for 2 years of depression. So
when you say depression, you mean like trying to really fit, right? And I think that is where trying to really identify yourself in the queer community, trying to fit in a place, because you kind of were in the crossroads when you came here to New York with a kind of a conservative, a little bit more traditional upbringing, still, fighting the norms back in India. And then here, there is a little bit more freedom, but still, it's hard to come out of that little shell because of that upbringing and identifying who you are. Is that something is that a right description when you say you were fighting depression?
I think it could be like parallel. Yeah, it's a parallel description, I believe.
Yeah.
I was pretty lucky to have open-minded parents who did not. I didn't grow up with a lot of restrictions. I also had like a privileged background growing up in India. So it was pretty easy. Everything was pretty easy. And I think when it comes to my identity, I just didn't know. And I say that because like there was no, like for me growing up in Vijayawada, there was no access to language. I think it just felt pretty organic for everything to happen without me understanding what it actually means. So when I moved and when I was confronted with my identity, that was a little hard for me personally, as opposed to my upbringing, because there's this one understanding of you all your life, and then you realize, oh, like that's actually not the case. And then a new part of you opens up, and then you have to like navigate what that means like, and what that means like within the family. So a part of my mental health journey or issues the first 2 years I moved to New York was had to do a lot with my coming to terms with my queerness, and also just figuring out how I place myself in creative society here.
Yeah. I mean, I also feel like you don't see, like, even if you had started this journey back in India, had you not moved here, but you don't see people like you. It wasn't that common. At least now maybe it is. But back then, I want to say it wasn't that common, right?
Yeah. I think for me, it wasn't. Yeah. I can only speak to my personal experience. Like growing up in Vijayawada, it wasn't. It wasn't as common. Like I didn't see any representation in media. Yeah, I didn't read many books. Like I read a lot of books. I didn't read any queer books. Like I knew, like of course, like if I seek them, I would definitely find them. But I at that point, I wasn't even seeking anything. Really.
Right.
Even now, I think, the society is evolving in India and transformations are happening, and there's a lot more openness in things like this, right? In identifying one's own individuality, identity and stuff. But there is a lot more change happening from when we were. I mean, we're talking about, and it's changes, the momentum is on, but I still don't think India, it's still not, we can't say that it's all changed. And now it's just easy to just identify yourself as queer, LGBTQ, trans, whatever you want. I don't think we're there yet. And the struggle still continues. But people like you probably are the ones that, slowly by identifying yourself and speaking out your truth, you're able to help somebody do that as well back in India. So I think kudos to you for actually stepping up and really, kind of coming to terms with who you truly are and trying to create that space within your personal and professional life and kind of living the truth.
Yeah, that's perfect.
With that, I wanted to, you did talk about some of your challenges in the first few years with trying to really claim that identity, of who you truly are. And when do you think you finally kind of got your first breakthrough? And how did that feel, like that moment when you felt like, oh, yes, I finally made it?
Oh, interesting. I guess like when I speak about a career breakthrough, I've always like rephrased what success meant to me growing up. I think that helped me navigate pursuing photography when all my friends were like making six figures.
Right, right.
uh,
Uh-huh.
so I think like that really helped me understand that okay, like there really is not like one defining point in your life that would be a breakthrough, but there would be like multiple small things. So that kind of understanding that I framed for myself when I was back in India kind of came clutch when I moved to States. So within the first year, my school was only first year, but yeah, like the first year, the first semester of my school, one of my professor, James Estrin, his name is James Estrin. He's the co-founder of New York Times blog, and he was our editorial photography professor. And he like it was just he really admired my assignment I submitted for school, and he was just like, "Oh, like in 5 years you're gonna be like a very well-established documentary photographer." And like I think that really helped me kind of push myself further.
Yeah, even through the times when you maybe doubted yourself, right? You kind of go
Yeah.
back to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I could always have that. Like I think like that's one of my core memory of what I define like as a breakthrough. But I
Mhm,
think
mhm.
that's a yeah, I think that is one point. And another incident was our chair, department chair at that point, Katrina Eastman, at School of Visual Arts, submitted my photo to Sony World Photography Awards, and it got shortlisted. And they flew us to London. Like I went to like
Nice.
awards
Wow.
ceremony. My parents were there, and I think
Oh, that must be such a big moment.
yeah, I think for my mother and father, that was kind of like a defining moment for them, saying, "Oh, like okay, like our daughter is kind of talented. Okay, maybe she did a good choice of leaving engineering behind."
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think that really like how Jim Estrin's comment kind of boosted my self confidence. I think that particular receiving that going to that award ceremony helped my parents a lot, and I think it also helped me reframe again what success would mean to me. And I think that was a pivotal moment in thinking about my career more seriously.
Yeah. I mean, just going through the work that you've been doing, two things really caught my attention. One was, I think both were documentaries. One is Life Along the Seven Line, because, I live in Queens, so like that instantly caught my attention. And the other was Queer South Asians. Can you just tell us, a little bit about the backstory of these films?
Yes. So Life Along the Seven Line is a photo essay that I worked with that was funded by a grant that I won from Sony. It's a Sony Alpha Female Plus grant. And I worked on that photo essay in January of 2021. It's a documentary essay focusing on the lives along the different neighborhoods of Seven Line. The Seven Line in New York City is called the International Express because it passes through almost like 8 to 9 different neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like documented life along the Seven Line quite literally. And I spoke to a couple of families there who were affected by COVID at that point. And the street and how COVID was also affecting the street vendors and their
Mm-hmm.
business. So yeah, it's a very broad documentary essay. And yeah, I think I just like the idea that the story flows along the Seven Line, and
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
certainly have to need it.
Yeah.
Queer South Asians is a personal project. It's currently shelved. I haven't been working on it for a couple of months. But it essentially started out in 2019 just to
Mm-hmm.
meet quite literally to meet other queer South Asians and interview them, have their interviews and transcripts, and make portraits of them and kind of like create this archive of queer South Asians, just talking about daily life, queerness, joy, like really random things, not really specific. And I think I derived that kind of format from this book that I read. It's kind of weird to quote a Russian journalist book during these times, but this book called Secondhand Time by Svetlana Alexievich.
Okay.
So it is a collection of interviews of Soviet Russians, pre-Russia, so like USSR Russians,
Okay.
and their thoughts on love, their thoughts on capitalism, their thoughts on socialism and communism. So it really is just like a collection of interviews in no specific order. So I really like that format because like people can take away whatever they want to from that particular book. So I kind of try to incorporate that, but that project is currently shelved because I need to pay the bills.
So this line, the first one you talked about, is that Life Along the Seven line. Is it available to stream, watch? Like, can our listeners watch it somewhere?
Yeah, it's you can view it on my website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a photo essay. The entire thing. Yeah, the entire spread is on my website, and a part of it has also been featured on Sony Alpha website.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
We'll definitely add the link to your website and all of this information you just shared, which is really interesting. But just like hearing about all your work and finding, like, there's a common thread in looking through all of your work is your unique storytelling style, right? You kind of write docu-essays with photography, and which comes through in the way you capture your subject and what influences them. Like, so what does that process in partnership with your subjects look like? I mean, I'm trying to kind of understand your thought process when you approach a subject matter and how you bring out that storytelling process. So, and the partnership that you establish with your subjects. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think a way I've always approached photography, I think because when I got into photography, it was a lot to do with like interpersonal relationships. Like I've already had a relationship with the musician I was working with. So like it was more of a conversation, a chat, and then I photographed them. So maybe like I'm guessing because like my roots were more like I was kind of like documenting my friends, making photos of my friends. So I've always seen it as a collaborator as opposed to a subject. So, and like photography also has a deeply racist, classist history. So the photo industry is kind of like moving away from the word subject because that kind of like introduces a power dynamic in the photographer and the collaborator.
Very interesting.
So that's something I've always tried to be mindful of. So when I approach a person to photograph them, camera is not the first thing that I pick up to photograph. It's more of a conversation. I kind of like check in with them, what they're doing, what they had for breakfast, what like did they like coffee, tea, all of the like the small talk. And then at some point they really like get into the conversation. And that's when I slowly start to ask them like, do you mind if I take a photo? So this is like when I approach people on the street. But if it's a photo essay, it's kind of like a similar approach. If I have time, I always make sure that I have a conversation with the person before I photograph them. I think photographically also it helps to, there's a saying, I forgot the name of the photographer, but there's a saying like you can take a photo, but when you make a portrait, you're essentially making a portrait of who they are.
Wow.
So I kind of horribly paraphrased it, but yeah, that's the kind of the sense the photographer thought was.
You know, when you're talking about that, you know, one thing that came to mind to me is the Humans of New York, which just expanded to becoming Humans of Bombay, Humans of London, the whole series that kind of exploded. And that was one of my first introductions, I think, to how photography could just captivate an entire story about a person, because the photo and the story kind of accompanied that. And it really stirred a lot of people's hearts. So when you're talking about how you approach kind of, you know, that particular concept of Humans of New York and, you know, how it expanded just came to mind.
Yeah, Humans of New York is like, it has like a brilliant, the photographer does a really good job of getting the collaborator to open up within the process. That's really impressive. So I think like my process is kind of similar. It's very collaborative and it only happens once the trust has been established. And it's also, when I say collaborative, not necessarily in the image making process, but it's also like how I produce the image, like how I edit it. If it's a video, then I like send the transcript to them, and then I ask them if they're comfortable with what I'm sharing on that. So in every process of the image making or the storytelling, like this collaborator is like, I make sure or I try to have the collaborator involved. Like a good example is for the 7 International Express, I photographed this family. This person who was making masks because their husband lost the job. And so I photographed around 40 to 50 images within the house. And then I sent them all the images and they just chose one photo. So I only had to publish that one photo because I had to respect their boundaries because they didn't want their identity, like the face to be shown, but they just wanted the story to be shared.
That's wonderful. We truly admire what you've done, Shravya, because just hearing from all this, and you've come a long way from India to here, switched career paths because you really spoke the truth. And came here and then even further identified who you are and kind of tied everything together to finally ultimately just live, just do the thing that we really care about and live the life that you really want to live and speak the truth that you want to speak. So kudos to you for doing that. Really, not a lot of people can say you can be this brave and bold to get to where you are. So kudos, and so lovely actually having you on our podcast and really chatting. Everyone do check out Shravya's work on Instagram, and you can contact her for all your photography and videography needs. She's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
Beyond words. And also, along with the brilliance comes this really fun and really nice person along. It's a huge package.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shravya. It was such a pleasure.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thank you, Shravya.
Thank you, everyone. Until next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Do continue to give us your valuable feedback via ratings, reviews, and hit the subscribe or follow button so you don't miss out on our new episodes.
Your support means the world to us. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at chai_break_podcast to get the scoop on our latest episodes dropping every Wednesday. You can also write to us at chaibreakpodcast@gmail.com.